Coming in this hazy Saturday. Really thank you for being here with us. And today, Ikegami Yoshihiko will be talking about post-war 70 years, the 1950s intellectual thoughts and its current social movement. As we know, Japan has passed a controversial new security bill just last few weeks, and people have been protesting in front of the parliamentary house, and Ikegami-san was there as well. And actually, this talk was it is organized by Inter-Asia Schools Modern Nation Project, and they have a they have an office in Singapore and Malaysia. It's a joint office, and they have offices in Tokyo, Okinawa, Korea, Taiwan, Hsinchu, Hong Kong. So the base in Singapore and Malaysia, it's actually based on Professor Ngoy Wat Peng. She is the researcher of the office. So actually, the Singapore Malaysia office, we have already held a few talks at an international conference just last year, and Ikegami was here last year with us to participate in the Revisiting Malaya conference, historical and political thoughts. It was held at the KL and Selangor Chinese Assembly Hall, and Professor Sheikh Ali was there as well. Thank you. Park Chong and Xiang Mo, these are our friends. And so this is not Ikegami-san's first trip to Malaysia. It was his second trip. And last year in the Revisiting Malaya conference, he was a discussant of the late Professor Chabon King's article. He responded to Professor Cha's article, and then we went to Mua to visit we went to Mua. Originally, it was just a tour, but then we happened to be in an exhibition on Japanese war crimes. So the local historian, Tei Chiong-hyang, Zheng Zhaoxian also just told this. He brought us to an exhibition, and it was about Japanese war crime. So Ikegami-san and the other professor from Okinawa, Chiyo Wakabayashi, was there. They were there, and there were some war survivors there. So he talked to them, and later he was asked to go on stage to speak about his feelings about being a Japanese, or to talk about his feelings. So to me, it's a bit. It seems like everyone demands apology from Japan, and if we have a Japanese representative here, and we want him to apologize to us as well. So this is the kind of the victimhood of Malaysian, especially Chinese Malaysians who survived, who suffered a lot in the Second World War. So yesterday in KL and Selangor Chinese Assembly Hall, we had a talk about post-war 70 years in Chinese by Ikegami Sensei. It was translated from Japanese to Chinese, and one of the discussants, Tang Achai, the executive director of the hall, he actually pointed out that in Malaysia it seems that it has been 70 years since Japan surrendered, and every year on the 15th of August, it seems like we have been demanding the same. Our appeals are the same. So the Prime Minister should apologize about on the war and comfort women, and they should not revise the history textbooks and so on and so forth. Those are the same demands. And what else can we do? What appeals and what demands that we can think about the Second World War history, and especially during the time, the inter-ethnic relations in Malaysia was quite complicated, and we haven't really talked about that in Malaysia. So maybe that's a point of departure for us to think about that after listening to Ikegami Sensei's talk. And so this July, me and Professor Moore was in Tokyo with Ikegami Sensei, and we went to some bookstores in Japan, and there were some reflection, special bookshelf. A lot of them, they're talking about the reflection on post-war 70 years, and how the Japanese, especially critical intellectuals, how do they respond to post-war 70 years. It's very complicated. I heard from Ikegami Sensei they have been leftist, far left, and within the leftists they are quite diverse as well. So maybe we can ask him about that. So we went to the parliament. We went to see the demonstration in front of the Parliament House as well in July. It was very crowded and people were demanding Shinzo Abe to step down. They are against the new security bill, but unfortunately it was still passed a few weeks ago. And so Ikegami Yoshihiko, he is an activist. Critical intellectual, yeah. He joined a very important critical journal in Japan, which is called Modern Thought, 现代思想, 现代思想, and he joined the editorial department of it in 1991, and he became the chief editor since 1994 to 2010. So it has been 16 years he was the chief editor. And my friends in Japan have been telling me that the time when Ikegami-san was the chief editor, the journal itself is very interesting and it becomes it has a distinctive character, they'll say. So Ikegami-san Sensei is a very important thinker in Japan, modern thinker in Japan, that we can learn a lot from him. So today he will be talking about the social movements in Japan. Compared to last night's talk, last night he mainly talked about the post-war history, 70 years, and how does he divide it into 3 different phases. But today he will focus on the social movements and political movements. And he actually told me that it's very complicated within the social movements in Japan, that somehow parts of them are depoliticized. So imagine the social movements but that reluctantly, consciously or unconsciously, they distance themselves from the politics. That's the situation in Japan. It has been some time, but recently the new security bill issue has revived, has redefined this kind of situation. So maybe we'll listen to how Ikegami Sensei talk about this. So let me give you Ikegami Yoshihiko. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and Samacha. I learned some Malaysian language, so I introduced myself by using a little bit Malaysian language. Nama saya Ikegami. Saya orang Jepun dari Tokyo. Terima kasih. About 20 or 30 persons are present here, so please raise your hand who listened my speech last night. Okay, not so many. Yeah, I don't want to repeat the story that I told yesterday. So, but I should repeat my story, a part of my story. Okay, this is it is a very great honor to be given a chance to speak at this place, Gerakbudaya, this bookshop. I visited here last year once in August. By the chance that the Shoin-shin and Wei Lao-shi gave us in the symposium revisiting Malaya. And this is a very wonderful place here. And in the future, it is very it is a very honor to, if I have a chance to hold an event here. But within a year, I should be here again to give you a lecture. It's a very, very great event for me. Thank you very much. Today, I will explain what is going on in Japan now. And this is the 70th anniversary of the after Japan Empire collapsed. After 70 years after the Japanese Empire collapsed, what happens now? The results you know very, very well. The extremely right-wing government rose up, and they decided to change the Japanese peaceful constitution, and they are going to farm militaries, follow the American policy. That's the so far the situation now in Japan. But today I want to show you what most of the Japanese ordinary people think about this situation in Japan. And to understand what is going on in Japan, you should look back from the 2011. 2011 is a vital year for Japanese people. As I told yesterday, that from the 1955 to 1990, Japan, it is called the 55 system. These 35 years, the Japanese political movement or social movement, never important things happen. But the 2011, from the 2011, 4 years ago, Japan has largely changed. Of course, the government itself changed and the people themselves changed. How they changed, I will show you. Now we see movie show. Yes. 2011, March the 11th. March the 11th. As you know well, Japan was hit by the big tsunami. And after that, the 4 nuclear power plants collapsed and melted down. And a lot of radiation matters were scattered all over Japan. That was a great shock, largest shock for us. And the Japanese society was, in my feeling, collapsed. And I don't know how you know about the 3/11 affair in Japan. I don't know. You know well, but you don't know well. I will show some films. First, I will show you the film taken by BBC, Tsunami Children. This is a long movie, but I will show you the first 3 or 4 minutes, please.
「 This is the story of the Japanese tsunami and the nuclear disaster which followed, told through the eyes of children.
思いっきりバチャンってなるから自分がまず倒れるんですよ。それで後からこう引きずられて死んでしまうみたいな感じなんですよ。川があって川の先には海があってそれで川の前に学校があって学校の後ろには山があった。
The tsunami struck on a Friday afternoon just before the end of the school day. It destroyed dozens of schools along 200 miles of Japan's northeast coast. All the schools evacuated to high ground, except for one. Okawa Primary School, more than 2 miles inland by the Ikegami River. Ten-year-old twins Soma and Fuka were in the 4th year.
1年生と2年生が、近くてそこが丸くなっていてその時にはプレイルームっていうところがあって私の一番好きなところは中庭でその理由はみんなで一輪車をして遊んだり一番のクローバーを探したり図工室から体育館通路があって途中から階段を降りるとプールがある。
The earthquake which produced the tsunami struck at 2:46 in the afternoon on the 11th of March.
この日の天気は雪が降っていたと思う。寒かった。その時は、まなちゃんの誕生日だったんで。
Okay. This film doesn't appear the nuclear disaster, but this film very well expressed the feeling or atmosphere, gloomy or despair, and the very heavy feeling at that time. And this film showed only the damage of tsunami, but many people around the Fukushima had a very big fear about the radiation matters. As you know well, Japan had the atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki 70 years ago by US. So we know how it is. We know very well how atomic bomb or radiation matters are danger to our human health. But the government or the electric company didn't tell us the truth. Then we have no information about what's going on in nuclear power disaster. So we are very disappear in a disappear field, and the nuclear disaster occurred March 11th, but 1 month or 1 month and a half. Japanese people didn't do nothing. Didn't do anything. Did nothing. We were in the house and think deeply what's going on in our future. Japan will be collapsed, or am I dead? I'm not young, but especially the young people, 20s or teens or 20s or 30s, and most especially the mothers who have the little child, like this film present. They are the most anxious about their children's future and our future. Can I have a baby or something like this? And we never moved. Very great feeling, looming all over Japan, especially in the east part of Japan. And after the 1 month and a half, some people living in Tokyo had begun to make a rally to protest what? To protest, they don't know, they didn't know. What should we against? Against the nuclear power plant, or against the government, or against the what? We don't know. We didn't know. But we should anyway. We should rise up. We should rise up and call something. It began the May in Tokyo district. Some people, not so young, but young people began to organize the rally. Originally, they thought that 100 or 200 people would gather and protest. And this is the result. It's just like a rock show, a music show. Maybe you don't see this protest. It's a music parade for joy. but it's not for joy. It's a desperate expression. And the 1 month silence as an individual after 1 month individual silence, people gather for the first time in a certain district in Tokyo. This 20,000 people maybe in a small district in Tokyo, Gaoensu. It's an explosion of the joy. Not joy not for the future, but we are together. And this situation, this kind of demonstration or this kind of rally spread all over Japan within a few days. And the rally began bigger. And this kind of rallies hold every week, everywhere in Tokyo or Osaka or everywhere in Japan, in every week or every day. But their slogan is protect our children, protect our life, responsible for government, responsible with the power plant company. This is not a political demand. Our fear, our demand, not a political demand. Our hope, our despair, and our deep reflection. Japan, at that time, in Japan there were 54 nuclear power plants working. And 4 reactors were in Fukushima and 4 reactors damaged. And then they left 50 nuclear power plants. After this disaster, there is only 1 nuclear reactor working. The other 49 stopped. So there's few nuclear programs in Japan now working. And this parade occurred in 2011. And 1 year after, 2012, new phase began. Till the 2012, rally and demonstration was held in town or street. But from the 2012, big rally began in front of the Prime Minister's house. Prime Minister's house is next to the Dai. People began to rally in front of the Prime Minister's house. President. what do you think about this? This is not a square. This is a walking road in front of the Prime Minister house. Not a square. Not like Muzega Square. It's only a road, walking road, very narrow. And many people are shouting only one word. Stop the restart. Stop restart. Stop restarting nuclear power. Stop the nuclear power. Stop. Only one word. And they are shouting this one word in 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Only one word. Like a plague. Like religious plague. This really continued 1 year. Every Friday, people gathering in front of the Prime Minister house and they are shouting one word. Stop resistance, stop power. And this is the one result. There is and that film was the second film was the third film was in front of the Prime Minister house, and they gradually went to in front of Parliament. It progressed to Parliament. Okay. This is this Parliament. Main road in front of the Parliament. They are walking road. We are prohibited to go into the road. We were still shouting the two sides. Only we are contained. But this there in the midnight, we rushed into the road. in the beginning in 2011, we don't know how to do. We didn't know what to do, how to do. So in the beginning, we just gathered. And the next step is in front of the Prime Minister's house. And then at last we reached in front of the diary. And this is a process, visual process of the only a social movement grown up to be political. But tragedy, after this, we could negotiate with the government. At that time, Minjutan, Democratic Party, was the government party, the first one. Democratic Party failed to dispose the nuclear disaster. So they lost their credibility of the people. But tragedy enough, if the Democratic Party lost their credibility to the people, we have no alternative. But the largest thing we thought that should be attributed to the Democratic Party. But we defied the Democratic Party. We have no alternative. And that's the second reason is the American. I spoke yesterday evening in detail about the relation between Japan and US. Nuclear power plant was introduced by America. It's America's world strategy. Began in 50s. Atomic for peace. And also people had a great fear over the future. And these 3 points, these 3 points, the extreme, the right-wing Abe, rose up after this rally. And the Liberal Democratic Party grasped the government again. And they began to alter the Japanese peaceful constitution and to follow the US military policy and to reinforce the Japanese militarism. As you know well, this happened this last month in Japan. This new security bill was introduced 4 months ago in the diet by the Abe government, Liberal Democratic Party. You saw the rally. These rallies are for the against the nuclear policy. We don't need the nuclear power anymore. We want to live in a low energy. Life is more important than energy. But we should face the new problem. It's a constitutional problem, and a military problem, and against the Abe government. It's entirely a political issue. And 4 months ago, they began to rally in front of the diet against the Abe government. The main people are young, students, 20s. And not only young, but also the many generations gathered every day in front of the diet. Saturday and Sunday are no diet. So the Monday to Friday, we gather every evening in front of the diet. One of them you can see. the progress of the rhythm from the 4 years. 4 years ago, we are only shouting. And 4 years after, the hip hop rhythm are very comfortable and they are very rhythmical. And many young people are gathering here to shout with them, shout together. Very rhythmical and they are very smart, very interesting. Maybe you don't know what she shouted, but she shouted many phrases. Down at it, save the Constitution, don't despise us, and save the life. And the important thing is, what is democracy? What is democracy? Democracy, this is a democracy. Many don't pass the fascism. No person, maybe some of you know, no person. Italian, Spanish slogan in people's phone in 1930s. No person, they shout no person. This film doesn't show, but they also shout no person in Spanish. Nobody understands no person, but they have the Google. So they search on Google, no person. So they can learn history from the Spanish popular form. And what is democracy? Tell me what democracy is now. When they shout in English. This is the slogan of the Occupy Wall Street. So you can stay for 30 minutes here. You can learn the history of the world people's movement from Spanish popular movement to Occupy Wall Street or whatever. This rally in front of Daya is a great thing. Not only the numbers they gathered maybe 200,000 people, whereas 300,000 people. Not only the number, but also it had achieved the entire political process. There are now the Liberal Democrat Party had the 2/3 of the representatives in the dialogue, and the opposite party are divided into 4 or 5 or 6 small parties. Through this movement, the gathering, the rally in front of the dialogue, these are small opposition group to make coalition. They have succeeded in politicalization of the movement. And now, there is a coalition between the movement and the parliament, opposition parliament. And regrettably, the new security bill has passed last month. This is the new phase. We should the new coalition, like Belgium, I don't know. We had a new opposition coalition led by communist one. This process is helped by the communist one. Some far right left or some right wing people say Communist Party manipulated this movement. They say far right and far left say the same thing, but it is wrong. The people's movement further go forward, and the Communist Party or other political party managed to follow up. It's entirely not manipulate. Communist Party never doesn't manipulate anymore. If the Communist Party don't follow the people, they will lose their support from the people, ordinary people. It's a reversal. It is a position explanation. So now new phase began in Japanese political field. It depends upon the success of the new coalition will be successful now to stop Abe, to stop extreme right government. But this is the unknown process for us, almost Japanese. This is unknown path, unknown way. We don't know how to do it. This is a challenge, big challenge for us. We don't know how. We don't know whether we can success or not. We don't know. But for the intellectual here, we should this process to be historicized. We should search the origin of people's spirit to historical process. There are a lot of arguments from the conservatives, right-wing argument, from the conservatives or liberals or Marxists or citizens or the left-wing intellectuals or the far left-wing. There are many discussions about this, how to historicize this movement, people's movement. In my opinion, after the collapse of the Japanese Empire in 1945, and from 1945 to 1955, I explained this process last night. But I call it a true after Postwar, post-war. These 10 years, the political situation is very fluid. After the collapse of the Japanese Empire, we could obtain very free space. Government has no power, but the U.S. military power, U.S. military occupied Japan 10 years. But their mission is to demolish fascist regime in Japan. So they tacitly gave people permission to free themselves. People made the general strike, or the workers' movement. So many movements are occurred in 10 days, 10 years. In Malaysia, I had that in 1948, Communist Party rose up. In Japan, also, in 1950, Communist Party rose up against U.S. military occupation. That's an order by Stalin, by Comintern, to Japanese Communist Party should fight against the U.S. military, U.S. occupation force, and to make a revolution in Japan. It was 3 or 4 days, for 4 years struggle, armed struggle. Not severe armed, but kind of armed struggle. And Japanese Communist Party went to underground. And the Japanese Communist Party split into 2 fractions. One is to continue the armed struggle, and one is to stop. In 1952, almost all the Japanese people forget now, but there was a big rally, huge rally in front of, in Tokyo. If you go to the Tokyo, you can see the long, very large place occupied by Empire Palace. Empire Palace. Empire Palace. Empire, now Empire. Emperor's Palace. At that time, Emperor's, in front of the Emperor's house, it called the People's Square. People's Square. Now it is another name, Emperor's Garden. But at that time, it called the People's Square. In 1952, in the People's Square, 1 million people gathered. 1 million people. And at the same year, in Osaka, there was a big rally. And in Nagoya city, there was a big rally. The time was the era of the Korean War. It is also an anti-war movement. And the US military who occupied Japan will leave soon. But the military base remained in Japan. Japanese people felt the crisis, sense of crisis, had a sense of crisis to be a client state to the United States. We are subjugated in the long run by the US. So people had a sense of crisis to be a slave of the United States. And the anti-war movement and the labor movement mixed in front of the Emperor's Palace, People's Square, 1 million people. This is the biggest rally. Even now we can gather 1 million. But now almost people forget this event. From 1945 to 1955, there was an era of people's movement, very political, not social movement. And in 1960, this is the last big demonstration of the people against the security treaty between Japan and America. This is the last. From 1960, about 50 years, there is no big rallies or demonstration in Japan. But there were not political demonstration, political movement. Rarely happening during this time, but there were many social movements in Japan. Women's liberation and the disabled person movement and the minority, ethnic minorities movement and the anti-nuclear movement and the anti-air pollution movement and the environmental demonstration. There are so many kinds of social movement. But Japanese social movement has its own feature. They sprang up by fiercely criticizing the old system of the left. For example, the Socialist Party, or the Communist Party, or the labor union, or the way of the political movement, the way of demonstration, or the way of rally. They fiercely criticize these all region, all left region. And we were at that time under the Cold War regime. Any political movement had little effect. The reason we don't know much about. So that every social movement had its own way, but they have little agenda. Some of them are very successful. For example, the air pollution or river pollution and environmental social movement are partly very successful because they consciously cut off the political movement. They are performing purely as a social movement. If they move as a political movement, every political party intervene their act. It's a bad effect. They saw, and they consciously cut off the effect, the influence by the political party, and they gradually part of gain their right to be paid. Maybe it's a Japanese future of the social movement. They have no concrete connection between political party and political process. They have no concrete connection between the national center of labor union. They did it consciously or unconsciously. And the labor union or communist party or socialist party could not or did not grasp or understand how these social movement, women's movement or the environmental movement, they couldn't understand what they are doing. It is none of us. It is nothing to do with us. This thing. So the social movement was isolated from the political movement. I don't know. It was good or bad. It has, of course, it has good points, but there were some bad points, of course. They don't know how to do to be reconnect, or again connect with the political. To be political, they don't know how to be political. It's a Japanese process. Yeah. But this consciousness of the social movement has its own way. This process progressed in 70s. 70s movement in Japan, influenced by the worldwide student movement or the cultural revolution in China, they criticized the old political movement, namely the movement in the 50s. Communist Party or Socialist Party or Labor Union. There is a deep clique between the movement in the 50s and the movement in the 70s. And these cliques are still going now. But as you see these films, we have begun to regain the connection between the political process and the social movement. Part, not entirely, part. We gradually began to understand what is politics. So, in my opinion, we should base the idea of a movement in the future should be based on the spirit of the 50s. And we should also, at the same time, consider the social consciousness of the social movement that began in the 70s. We should understand and include this consciousness. And the social movement, and from the side of the social movement, they should understand what is political. And they should look at themselves in this political process. They should. This mutual understanding, the spirit and the new consciousness should be mixed in the future. This process is very important in the emergent process of the future to be against other, to be against the extreme right. This is what I wanted to say. This is the very rough process that I explained. There are many interesting episodes in Japanese movement scene. For example, we have the, for one example, very peculiar movement in 70s. There was very small group, very small, called the East Asia Anti-Japanese Armed Front. East Asian Anti-Japan Armed Front. Armed Front. The members are all Japanese, not anti-Japan, East Asian anti-Japan. They use the bombing. They are terrorists. It's an extreme way of the war responsibility. But it is not a main theme today. There are a lot of the interesting episode. But I want to say now very important is to gain political process. How to do it, we don't know. But what is the resource of our history? I think it is it lies in 50s. It's my conclusion.
What is political in your definition?
What
is political in your definition? When you say
political process,
what do you mean by that?
Very simple. The parliament, diet is the. Of course, it's a place of making law. We should make law. The security bill is a law. We should abolish them.
it could be done only in that. So I call simply this process is political. Now it is very important for us now.